This is Leadership Beyond, your community of conversation.
Joining us today is Aiko Thurlow. She's the CEO of InFounders. When she was little, her parents had a small business. It gave her a front row seat at understanding how difficult entrepreneurship was. Over the years, she started a number of businesses, all with the mission of better supporting entrepreneurs. Coming across Masterminds was a revelation. She witnessed such growth from founders who participated in them. And she absolutely loved that Masterminds brought out meaningful values like trust, empathy, and courage, while bravely tackling big taboos. Imposter syndrome, anyone? And most importantly, creating stellar communities. By creating InFounders, she hoped many more entrepreneurs would benefit from their incredible power. And with InFounders expanding beyond entrepreneurship, Aiko is thrilled to expand the benefits of peer networks to as many people as possible. Welcome, Aiko Thurlow. Good afternoon, Aiko. Thanks for joining us.
Good afternoon, Tom. Such a pleasure being here.
Can you start with just giving the audience a little bit of your background and how you came to this moment at InFounders?
Yes. So my background, I'm originally from Montreal. I originally studied economics, but eventually, after a few years into the corporate world, kind of discovered the true passion for entrepreneurship. And starting a number of different businesses by myself and kind of, being at the forefront of this, I also saw how lonely of a process it was until I was part of a mastermind. And a mastermind is an incredible opportunity to be with a group of peers where you collaborate. So everyone's working on their own, challenges, their own businesses in this case, but it's a group that confidentially comes together, shares best practices, insight, support. And once I tapped into this, I thought, oh, there ought to be more of this into the world. Where has this been my whole life? All these years where I've been an entrepreneur without this. And I loved it so much. It changed me so much that I started InFounders.
Wow. Well, I'm going to start with some negative thinking. We're positive people, and we're going to talk about your secret sauce and all of the ways you do what you do. But I'm going to start with some negative thinking, which is many companies have tried peer groups. And I've worked with companies that had business resource groups that they got all excited about, but they have a tendency to fizzle. Or worse, they continue because they encourage employees to participate in them, but they're not getting the value. So what goes wrong with some corporate attempts at doing peer groups? And even mentoring falls into that. We know mentoring's important, but if it's done wrong, I feel like they stuck me with Aiko and now she's got to mentor me. So talk a little bit about what can go wrong, and then we'll talk about your secret
Oh,
sauce.
I love that you're bringing this up because the quality is everything, right? If we are able to deliver a quality experience, we'll completely change the outcome. And so usually the two components I look at for a really strong peer group, a really strong, might be called, I mentioned the term mastermind before, some people call them forums. It comes down to two things. Usually what I look for is to have a really deep component of substance that's there. So people need to walk away every single time with new insight, new knowledge, new next steps, inspiration, all of that. And the other part is also to say that the relations within the group should have grown deeper and fonder so that people don't look around the room and just see a bunch of strangers that they've been put in, but they start hearing the stories. They start having empathy for one another. They just are pulled into each other's world in the most beautiful of ways. And when these two things are there, that's when there's a really strong ROI in a group. And for these two things to happen, a number of things need to happen in a group. It needs to be well facilitated. The time needs to be kept incredibly well. All of these small components, the group needs to be well curated. But once the foundational elements are there, as long as we can make sure that both of these outcomes are delivered, you're going to have an amazing group.
Mm-hmm. And as I heard the not the resource part of it, but the interaction part of it, you mentioned on your website about creating trust building space within these groups. Say a little bit more about the secret sauce there.
Yeah, so trust is something that's so beautiful because it's something that's acquired. And usually people think that we need a very long amount of time to acquire trust. What we've discovered in our group is that, yes, that's one way definitely of going, right? So a friendship that you had for years and all of that, you will have built trust over time. There's also a shorter way of building trust, and that's going deep very quickly. It's not to force anyone into depth, but it's to invite everyone to a depth level that they feel comfortable with. And by creating a moment like this, where everyone is able to take a leap of faith into one another, to just really embrace at a deeper level what it can mean to be seen, if everyone does this, you will build trust incredibly quickly. And that's part of our methodology. A lot of the time with our clients, we have a very short amount of time for a group to bond because, again, as quickly as possible, we want them to, start having that ROI of deep substance from one another and the deep relationship building from connecting with one another. For that to happen, we need trust as that foundational layer. And embedding this in the methodology, not just hoping that it's going to happen, makes a whole difference in how people show up and the amount of depth that they feel comfortable in sharing with.
Yeah, it would happen by accident with some of the people, but you're making it very intentional.
That's right. Yeah. And the other part in building trust is also being clear on what the ground rules are, right? So for any new group, any new gathering that comes together, at first people are kind of uncertain of knowing how should I function in this group? And they're kind of like open to I would say open to kind of option seeing where this is going to lead them. And as, if a group is being facilitated, the beginning is the only time where we kind of have the opportunity to set the ground rules of what this trusted space is going to look like. So we need to champion the values, state out loud what the values are, curb any type of behavior that we don't want to see, and make sure that and honestly celebrate anyone who's acting the right way. But making sure that we do this really creates a place where people understand what's expected of them. That clarity is so important, and that becomes also the space where people understand that showing up with deep trust is understood, expected, welcome, protected, confidential, all of these things. And that allows for much different bonding and relationship and therefore collaborations and outcomes, right?
See it. You do this primarily within corporations, right?
So,
So,
yeah, well, so a lot of the time it's going to be my clients are going to be on the B2B side. So it's going to be, yes, industry association, any type of programming for entrepreneurs a lot of the time because we still work with them closely and sometimes corporations around culture building. Yes,
mhm. So it's a community within a community.
that's right.
And
Yes.
on the process side, are these once you form them and do the clear expectations, they're ongoing, or do you have it in phases like a phase one, or how do you structure it?
hmm Yeah. So usually what we're going to have is that, well, first, it's going to be important to curate the people that are in the group together. We want to make sure that there's no one that is so a competitor to one another, no one that's a direct report to one another. Because again, for trust to be there, we need to ensure that there's that level of understanding and safety that's set. So if let's say it's within a corporation, it's going to be great if it's people at a similar level. If the company is large enough, amazing also if they don't know one another, right? So it could be, let's say, all the, senior managers of different divisions that usually work in silos, but now have the opportunity to collaborate with one another. Again, each working on their own issues and being there to tackle their own hurdles, but not needing to do this in their own echo chamber.
Mhm.
And
So,
yeah,
no, go ahead.
well, so I was just going to say, so curation is the first part. That's kind of like the foundation to this. And then afterwards, what's going to happen is that we keep the group small, usually 6 to 7 people is our sweet spot. And the group is going to have a kickoff where we do activities to go deeper, to talk, to take again kind of that leap of faith altogether, to share more and to build that trust very quickly. We will give them a sense of what they can expect, do a demo, and then every other session is going to have a very similar agenda where one person's going to be, there are more elements to that than the agenda, but the core of it is that one person is on the hot seat and the rest of the group is supporting this person. So that's going to be the kind of the ongoing sessions, and every single one of these sessions is facilitated afterwards. Usually a group has a clear start date and date that is facilitated, Then depending on the organization, sometimes that gets renewed, or if not, the group is then in a solid enough situation to be able to continue on their own, because by then they've actually learned the language, to how to support one another. And there are so many methodologies, again, around supporting and problem solving in a group, but we kind of make sure that we infuse this and help people practice all of these skills with these first sessions that we do with them. So a lot of the time we're going to be looking at maybe 4 to 6 months at least that is facilitated.
The advantage of having an end date is you can choose to continue and change, but it makes measurement and expectations and feedback much clearer if it
Yes.
isn't just open-ended.
You absolutely get it. And obviously changes happen in people's lives and people's jobs, all of that. It also leaves room for that flexibility to say, all right, we're at a point of reset. And sometimes it is because these people have spent, we've had groups that have renewed a few times, and then maybe they're at a point where they've kind of like squeezed a lot of the insights and the knowledge that they would have to share from one another. And then it might be good to kind of mix the group and also give the opportunity within the corporation for different people to get to know one another.
Mhm.
But there are so many reasons why, yeah, absolutely. Having kind of a set time is good. First of all, for expectations, just so that it gives kind of everyone a clear understanding of what's expected of them from the start.
Mhm. Well, you mentioned on your website about ROI. What
Mhm.
is it you measure from a peer group?
Yeah. So it's so interesting because every single session, when we have a person that's going to be on that hot seat, what this means is that this person is coming in and bringing their most pressing challenge or what keeps them up at night. That can be anything. Usually we keep it on the professional side because these are professional groups. Sometimes it will also tie into their personal life. We're kind of welcoming, obviously, both sides of the conversation. Again, this is a confidential group. And really, the ROI on this is to say, are these people able to be, by the end of the conversation, at a significantly different place than when they started at the beginning? So are they able to have untangled their thoughts? Are they able to think about it differently based on all the questions that happen within the groups, on all the insights that were shared within the group, the stories, the experiences of others? Were they able to come up with a new plan and clear next steps? And then afterwards, it's to say, let's have accountability for you, right? You've had an amazing hot seat. What are your takeaways? And let's check in with you. And for us, our greatest measurement is to say, when we are able to see these people completely transform their positioning from when they started their mastermind to by the time the mastermind ends, and obviously we have surveys and we're going to ask for a number of different KPIs, but it's really kind of the evaluation of where are you at by the end of this. And hopefully you've had this value from your own hot seat and the accountability afterwards, but also from every single challenge that gets shared by a peer throughout this time. Because every single time a challenge gets shared, a lot of the time it's very relatable. And people learn from, the insights that their peers will share. And a lot of the time there's a massive amount of learning that comes just by listening to other people's stories on similar topics.
Yeah.
So yeah, all of that kind of turns into that ROI of progress, really.
And you need to separate out the part that's confidential and the part that they would want to brag about to their peers. Yeah.
Yes, we have a number of values within our groups, and obviously we make sure that it is a place, like humility is one of the values that we have. It's a place to leave the Superman suit at the door, to show
Mhm.
up authentically, to have the conversations that we can't have elsewhere. And it's really rare to have a group like this where people will likely feel very similar things than you feel about your problems because you are all at very similar stages at this point, experiencing this often all alone, right? It's a lot of the time you are so busy at work, you finally come back home, and I'm not sure that your spouse feels like having you dump, right? Everything that's going on internally at work, all your emotions about it, how to process it. But we can intentionally create a space like that for people, not only to kind of have an outlet, but to have clear next steps that can come out from this and to help them untangle the messy and to help them clarify the unclear, right? And at the same time, everyone gets to learn from it. Why not? Yeah.
Yeah. Aiko, I'm so inspired because we're seeing people say a sense of belonging is the most important thing. And yet our business culture is
Ugh,
anti-belonging. And
yeah.
sometimes, not blaming corporate culture,
Mhm.
sometimes we are figuring Slack or some other tool will take care of this. And so we
Yeah,
become increasingly transactional
we do. We do.
and
Yes.
complain about it. When certainly not as expertly as
Yeah.
you do it, but everybody could have the opportunity to create space for conversations not directly related to today's to-do list. So that's
Yes.
inspiring in and of
Well,
itself. We've got to fight for space.
thank you. Absolutely. And that sense of belonging happens a lot of the time when we finally get to hear what's going on behind, right? Behind that veil that we're all, that we're all kind of like covering up. There's a messy side to each and every one of us. And I think a lot of the time, corporate means let's cover this up and show up professionally. And that's great. That's, kind of how our society is civilized and all of these lovely things. But at the same time, it's also important to first know that the behind the scenes is something that everyone experiences. Having a group where everyone kind of opens up on this and reveals what's really going on in their life is is incredible. For a lot of people, it's an immense sense of relief to know that they're not alone, struggling with these things and all of that. So it creates such deep belonging. But at the same time, also, again, knowing that you're not alone needing to solve all of your problems because you're not as weird as you thought because everyone's also dealing with them. It's kind of the belonging, the learning together, the like encouraging and cheering one another, all of these things. I'm like, it's bringing the humanity back into relationships. And there used to be water cooler conversations before and to a certain extent, these don't happen anymore. Let's re-engineer conversations, but also let's re-engineer better conversations.
Yeah.
Water cooler conversations were small talk, right? How was your weekend? How are you doing? And that's also
And that's
important.
important, but it's missing what are you
Yes.
going to do and come back and tell me. So if I said to you at the water cooler, I'm really struggling with Schmedley, you might say things that are helpful, and I might say
Yep.
thank you, and it's all sincere. But a month
Yep.
later, I see you at the water cooler on Bagel Day. It's very unlikely that you're going to say, you agreed to have a conversation with Mr. Schmedley. And the accountability part and just the community part.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah.
So that's
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's you're absolutely right. I think just having that depth, having, it's relationships that are so deep that get formed. It's people, being invited to each other's wedding, and like that's the level at which complete strangers become incredibly close friends who have each other's back and who can talk shop because that's the original purpose of the meet and of these gatherings. But it's to again have that depth and also have that efficiency because we are all more and more busy, and with that, increased stress on our time comes that evaluation in everyone's mind of, is this productive or not? Because if not, I don't have time for it. And this is where I'm like, yes, people have less time for just, mingling. And however, they do have time for things that are highly productive like that. But the layer behind this is that it offers deep community, deep culture. And that
and that increases engagement and
absolutely,
it is productive. It's not the most
yes.
productive thing you can do this week because the dividends take a while and the roots to go down take a while, but then the tree keeps regenerating and it's much more
Well,
productive.
one thing that I'll say is that one of the beauty of having a peer group like this is that a lot of the time we're so stuck in the weeds that we're looking at problem solving in the weeds.
Yeah.
The beauty of talking to a peer group is that all our peers have a big picture view, right? We are so stuck in the weeds that we kind of like don't really see whether we're headed in the right direction or not. But our peers, by asking us questions, understanding our problem, and looking at this kind of emotionally detached because they're not living this situation, and also having kind of the freedom and flexibility of their own external perspective, a lot of the time will give the type of advice that have saved people, hundreds of hours of time because they were so stuck in the weeds that they were going in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
And that big picture view, a lot of the time, is what's going to make the whole difference in productivity. So, for folks who have told us before, I'm not sure I have the time to show up, and then eventually they do, a lot of the time they've come back and said, this was by far the best, time management tool that I've had because it allowed me to refocus on my 80/20. And I was losing that sense of perspective because I was so busy executing.
Mhm. And you've
And
already
yeah,
said what your big picture is to the peer group, so somebody else can gently say, how is that really helping you with this? And it's something you
that's
already
exactly it.
said, so they didn't make it up. Yeah, that's
Yes,
powerful.
yes,
I
yeah.
would invite you to tell one success story, obviously protect any confidentiality, but just enough to
Mhm.
get the idea in story form of
Yeah.
impact.
Yeah, we had someone that was really struggling from a marketing standpoint. So she was in charge of marketing a product. She was struggling to kind of make, waves into her space. And so even though she was keeping busy, we were not seeing as much impact and traction from what she was doing in her group, right? And so her peers kind of, first started with accountability and saying, amazing, maybe it's a productivity thing. So what if we were to hold you accountable for certain things? And obviously this was kind of based on a much larger conversation. She said, yes, 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 this is exactly what I mean. So accountability happened and the progress was still not there. So eventually a little bit more digging happened to really understand what's going on, what's in the way, and in the end, people got to understand, and this is also how we encourage our group to kind of problem solve, to understand what the real root cause of the issue is. After a few months of accountability not kind of turning into anything, these bigger questions happen to understand why. And eventually it got into self-worth and understanding that that person's self-worth was not there enough for her to show up confidently talking about what she needed to talk about, for her to be, the spokesperson and the face and to put herself out there to represent this product that she had. And they told her, well, if that's there, you've got two options, right? Either you can try to work on it or try to find someone else to be pushing your marketing. Which one of these options would work best for you? She took a really deep breath. There was kind of this long moment of silence, but you could just feel that the group had really kind of like touched a really, really deep and meaningful part for her. And she said, you know what? It's likely my only chance to work on my self-esteem that I'll ever have as well supported as this. Let's do
That's
it.
beautiful story.
And she
Yeah.
did. And it was I'm getting emotional thinking back of this, but it was absolutely revolutionary to see how she was able to show up afterwards, how she was able to have the impact that she wanted to have. And within not very long, it just took off. And she was so stuck deep in like, how could I say her patterns before, but her being able to kind of really change, and this change, took many months, obviously, don't get me wrong, this was kind of work in progress, but her peers, there was a WhatsApp group around this team. They were constantly on. I'm just, facilitating. So I'm kind of looking from the sideline. They were cheering her on, encouraging her, making sure that, she stayed committed. And within a few months, the changes that we saw were extraordinary. Her product got onto the biggest shelves nationally.
Yeah.
It was pure success, right?
And
So,
so if
yeah,
we don't have space for trust, then we don't have the vulnerability. Then we
yes,
keep playing whack-a-mole with surface problems that keep
that's right.
recurring
That's
because
right.
we can't get to the root without owning that there's something in us that needs to change. And that is very difficult to do without support.
Yeah,
And
you
so that's a
you've got it.
wonderful
And
story.
yeah, and there's so many, it's truly life-changing to have, I think, a group that has time for you and believes in you. And to me, that's, some of the saddest statistics that I see around are to say, and I don't remember exactly what the numbers were, but it was to say, you know, who, who has someone who really has their back. And I believe it was something as like even 50% of people who were married said no one, right? I'm I'm just thinking this is a type of thing that should not happen. Like we should have each other's back. And also it's again, time is so precious and important and fleeting, but there's some things that are so worth it because it's kind of It is what nourishes our soul. And also it is what genuinely creates change. Not, not microscopic change. I mean, transformative change.
Yeah.
That is part of it. Yeah,
Well, that's a spiritual crisis that you just defined,
it is.
and the symptoms of it are everywhere. Depression and suicide, and
Yeah.
is it just what profit a woman if she gained the whole world and lose her soul? You use the word soul nourishing, and it makes business sense because with our prefrontal cortexes, we can probably have business impact based just on that up to a point. But if we really want human flourishing, it's got to be body, mind, and spirit, whole self. And
I
your work
couldn't
is
agree
very
more.
important for that. I'm going to leave it with an open-ended question. Anything you'd like to leave our audience with? I thank you so much for joining us. This will
Mhm.
be helpful to our community of conversation. But
Yeah.
leave them with anything you'd like to leave them.
One thing that I would say is that a lot of the time when we're looking at supporting someone, and this kind of goes into our methodology, but for me, that's kind of one of the most pivotal things that I've learned in this whole process. At times, our heart is really kind of leaning in to help someone, but the way in which we support is also really important. What I mean by this is that I used to be, and I still am sometimes, I really need to correct myself, and it's work in progress. Even though I teach this and I
Mhm.
preach this, it's still work in progress. Someone comes to us with a struggle, a pain point, a challenge, and our first reaction is often to give advice.
Problem solving mode right away. As a coach, I have to
Absolutely.
continuously remind myself, did I learn it 15 years ago? Yes. Did I learn it 15 years ago? No. I have to continuously pause and
Yeah.
say, my intention is to support and draw from you and
Yes.
challenge you to get real with yourself. And it
Yes.
isn't that kind of knowledge. If you gave me a test, I would get an A in it. And then sometimes I can't believe how quickly I went into problem solving. And men are
That's
worse than
great.
women usually, especially when you talk about
Well,
spouses. They don't want you to get out a flip chart and start solving them. They want some listening. Let's get
Well,
out a
and
flip
it's
chart.
the listening and the other, if I was to kind of simplify, like very, very simplify, part of the methodology that we use for problem solving, it's to first ask a lot of questions. So be really curious to understand, what is this person living through? Give them space to just think it through because a lot of the time that space is so useful, so will feel like a pressure valve that kind of is, finally having its steam let off. And the other part is that genuinely allows us to understand without judging, without anything, just kind of leaning in curiously to understand where they're at. And the other part, instead of coming in with advice, because we obviously want to feel useful and
Yes.
think of a story maybe of a similar time that you've had and what you have done about this, and let that person take what they want from it. But a lot of the time, just these two simple things can completely change how we come in and support people. And I'm just hoping that anyone that's listening might be able to take advantage of this. For me, it has been transformative. It's definitely how we teach our group to come together. At times we have people saying like, what about the conflicts in the groups, right? Like if someone says this and then someone else says something else, and we're like, no, actually, if someone comes in with a problem, yes, question asking, and then after supporting with our own shared experience, our own experience, sharing this generously, but not expecting anything in return. That I find is such a beautiful way to stand with people. And hopefully, I'm just hoping for more collaboration, more, I call this peership, peers coming together, having each other's back. But I just hope that more space is given for that because it's exactly what both business and humans need.
Well,
So,
your
Tom,
hope is
thank you.
vibrant and observable. How can people reach you? This will also be in the show notes, and any links
Yes,
you want, you can put in the show notes, but tell people how
absolutely.
to reach you.
Yes, LinkedIn would be the best place to reach me. Please reach me there. Tell me what you liked, how I can connect, anything at all. I'm more than happy to help, and I want to be there. And also, if you have listened all the way through here, it sounds like you are a community builder. It sounds like you are a leader with thoughts around, yeah, how to bring fellow humans together. And I think that's absolutely wonderful. So, yeah, I would love to support anyone who's out there trying to do this type of work.
Aiko, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Tom. Such a pleasure.